As the temps start rising, I feel the familiar urge to refresh my closet, but I don't want to waste money on pieces I'll only wear once or for just one season. Thankfully, Quince changes that. Their clothes are timeless, lightweight, and far more elevated than anything else at this price. It finally feels like my wardrobe matches my standards. The best part is that Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes, so you get to look good while feeling good. I'm pretty excited that I have upgraded my athleisure wardrobe for this summer. I bought a sweatshirt and a pair of wide-leg flow pants that are two of the softest items I own, and I plan to live in them. So join me in giving your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/POTC for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/POTC to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/POTC.
I've coined this thing called pregrets, and I know it's super cheesy, but it's this idea that, when you do that deathbed regret exercise, which has been done before, and I want us to keep doing it because we do need that reminder. When we identify that list, the good news, of course, is for most of us, we're not on our deathbed. Yay us! We're going to live to see another day. And so what can we do to prevent that regret from happening? Because it's not a regret yet.
That was Jodi Wellman on Psychologists Off the Clock.
We are four experts in psychology here to bring you cutting-edge and science-based ideas from psychology to help you flourish in your relationships, work, and health.
I'm Dr. Debbie Sorensen, a clinical psychologist practicing in Mile High, Denver, Colorado, and author of Act for Burnout, Act Daily Journal, and the Act Daily Card Deck.
From America's Heartland, I'm Dr. Emily Edlin, a clinical psychologist based in Chicago, Illinois, and author of Autonomy Supportive Parenting.
Calling in from Vienna, Austria, I'm Michael Herold, ACT coach, confidence trainer, and author of an upcoming book on being a better conversationalist and making friends.
And from coastal New England, I'm Dr. Jill Stoddard, author of Be Mighty, The Big Book of ACT Metaphors, and Imposter No More.
We hope you take what you learn here to build a rich and meaningful life.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock. Hello, everyone. Michael here, and I'm sitting with my favorite Debbie here to discuss my interview with Jodi Wellman on the absolute fantastic book, You Only Die Once, How to Make It to the End with No Regrets. Debbie, what are your thoughts on the interview?
I absolutely loved this conversation. I would put it in the category of among my favorite interviews that we've done. And I think the reason for that, you get into some really deep, meaningful conversations, but the topic might sound a little bit dark. But first of all, she has such humor and such warmth, and there's such lovely banter between the two of you. It didn't feel heavy. It was an enjoyable conversation to listen to, but it left me with this amazing feeling of vitality. I was listening to it on my way to work this morning on a Tuesday morning after having kind of felt a little bit just going through the motions of the work week. And at the end of the conversation, I felt alive, felt excited to live and to have this Tuesday. And it's kind of amazing that this podcast interview could do that for me.
Yeah, that was a big takeaway for me as well. And I told her that in the interview that even though this book is about dying, and dear listener, don't worry, it's not a dark interview, I think, because what I love about the book is that it has such a dark humor. It just takes everything with such a little mischievous grin on the face, for the lack of a better word. And yeah, so the big takeaway for me at the end of the book was just, even though this is a book about dying, I just felt so alive and I just wanted to live even more fully.
Yeah. The timing on this interview is really interesting to me personally for two things that have happened in my life. One, she talks about a birthday with a big zero. And I wrote that down because I have one this year.
Oh, yeah.
And
the 4-0.
50, Michael. Thank you for saying that. I send you $5.
Hey, we agreed on 50.
Anywho, right. Okay, 50. Yeah, one for each year turning. But yeah, I mean, I think that I'm having this really profound sense as my 50th birthday approaches this year of how, odds are my life is halfway over or more than halfway over, statistically speaking. And there's a weird sensation that is happening with that, which is just that I'm feeling like this birthday is bringing me very much in touch with the idea that life is slipping by. And we're coming out of winter here in Denver, Colorado. It's kind of turning into spring. And there was a snow day recently where I felt a sense of, I can't wait for summer. But then, I love winter actually, but I kind of had this feeling of like, okay, I'm ready for that hot weather where you can be outside. And then I had this profound feeling of, but I'm also not really, because another winter has passed me by, which brings me like one fewer winter that I have left. And so there's this tension, I think, of, life just going by, but wanting to slow down and savor it before it's too late. And so, my 50th birthday is bringing a lot of that up for me. And so this was great timing for me. And then the other thing that happened to me recently, so about a year ago, my dad went into the hospital, and I won't get into details about it. He's okay. But it was really scary. I just had this profound moment. He lives here in Denver. My dad and stepmom live here in Denver. And I rushed over there to see, to be there when he was in the hospital. It was kind of an emergency situation. And fortunately, he was okay. But I had this profound feeling of, I don't spend enough time with him. And it's always because I'm like busy with this, busy with that, working, 2 kids. And yes, that's the reality, is that I'm trying to, I can't just overload myself by taking on everything under the sun. But I also just had this really profound sense of like my priorities and what matters. And why do I sometimes feel like I'm too busy to spend time with the people I love? And I do, it's not like I never see him. It's just that sometimes it's very easy to not see people, not spend enough quality time with people I love.
Not have the priority right. Yeah. Because there's always something that's more urgent right now.
Yeah. And in that moment, it just really hit me like how important it is to make time for the really, really important things.
Yeah, the meaning part, the counting part. I told her, I think towards the end of the interview, if I remember correctly, that I do have a running list in my brain of this is how many more times I'm seeing certain family members. This is how many times I'm seeing more distant friends. Just, based from experience. I know I'm, back home 3 times a year. So doing the math, how much more often I'm seeing my grandma is fairly easy. Now, this sounds dark, but as we discuss in the interview, it's beautiful. Because I can promise you that having these numbers in the head, you're not reaching for the phone. You're not reaching for the phone to check social media while you're around loved ones. You're not postponing meeting them. You're not rushing through things. It's like, no, here's a number. It's 2 digits, and I'm going to enjoy every single piece of this every single time we meet. Oh, Debbie, we're talking about this in such like dark terms, but I just want to highlight how Jodi has this ability to just make it light and have some jokes around it. Like the terms she used there, she talks about not death, she talks about biting the biscuit, which is just brilliant.
Yeah.
and the book is full of that. But so on one side, we have this scarcity that she makes us really aware of. And on the other side, she has this beautiful way of highlighting that sometimes we just need to have frickin' ice cream. Sometimes there's time to be productive, and there's time to put your feet up, have your favorite pizza, and watch a movie, go out into the sun, meet friends, don't hustle all the time, enjoy life. There's only so many Mondays you have left. And you need to enjoy.
I think that's exactly what she provides here. It's this perspective shift, right? Kind of tapping into, we get so focused on the day-to-day problems in front of us. We get in the weeds, and it's a real perspective shift that she offers. And I think it's an important one.
Yeah. And I wanted to add something here as well, which did not make it into the interview, but simply for time reasons. And that is that when the pitch for the book, for the interview came in and hit our email inboxes, like we get a lot of those and we discuss them internally and we get the book and we go through the book a little bit. When I saw this pitch, it took me like 3 minutes to email all of you and say, I want to do this interview. This is brilliant. This is spot on. And the reason this felt so spot on for me, and we talked about this in a co-host episode recently, where I was talking about my muscular condition and how I'm losing strength and how things that I was able to do 10 years ago, like going for walks, I can no longer do. How traveling, which I still did 5 years ago, I can no longer do on my own, and how I'm losing things a little bit here and there. And that's why this book like really spoke to me, because this is something that I have subconsciously done since I was a kid. Like I knew, like I enjoyed riding my bicycle, but I can do this maybe 2 or 3 more years. How am I going to use that? And for so many other things in my life, this came up, and I've never seen it as a detriment. I've always seen it as one of my strengths in life, that because I knew certain activities were very limited in time, that's why by the time I was 30, I've done a lot of things that people have on their wish list for when they're retired, because, time is at the essence. And I had no idea what a fun read this book would be and what a fun conversation this would be.
Michael, I haven't told you this, but I think about that conversation in that particular co-host episode when you shared that a lot. And I should probably tell you that. So I'm telling you now that it just was really powerful to me. I think that stuck with me, that you are so in touch with that sense of like, I really want to savor this moment and enjoy it because I know that my time is limited to do these things. Like it just really touched me to hear you talk about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. All right, dear listener, I can probably not oversell this interview enough. This was one of the most fantastic self-development books I've read in years, and it just makes me really want to be alive. And I hope it does the same for you as well. Jodi Wellman is a former corporate executive turned executive coach. She has a master's in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where she's an instructor in the master's program and a trainer in the world-renowned Penn Resilience program. Jodi is the author of the spectacular book, You Only Die Once, How to Make It to the End with No Regrets, which we'll discuss today. This is a book with a morbid twist. Those are her words, not mine. So please prepare your ears for a slightly sublethal dose of dark humor in today's interview. Jodi lives between Palm Springs and Chicago with her husband and cat, Andy. Welcome, Jodi. Good to have you.
I am excited to be here. And also, I have to remember the words you used about a sublethal dose of like morbidity. I like this. It will be not lethal, but
exactly, slightly sublethal. We want to take good care of our listeners here. So tell me, what made you write the book? I realize this is a little bit of a tricky question because you have 2 beautiful stories in there that are sort of the origin story of the book. One about the death of your mom and the other you loading a stapler. 2 stories that luckily aren't causally connected. So which one do you think had more influence in you writing this book?
Oh, great question. It's funny because before thinking even of those stories, my very first instinct when you asked that was one of those moments where it's like, because I couldn't not write it. Like it was just so overwhelming as a presence in my life after studying this topic of memento mori, remembering we're going to die. So in many ways, it was almost like this train has left the station. So just like it's coming out of here. And part of, my mission to scream this from the mountaintops, which is like, wake up before we die, please and thanks. But if we're getting, deeper, you are right. Probably the story about my mom was the real impetus that made me aware of my deep-seated fear about dying with regrets. And my dear sweet mother died in her late 50s. And when I went through the process of cleaning up her place, afterwards, which now should be a shout out for the art of Swedish death cleaning, to get your stuff together before you die so that other people don't have to clean up after you. But I became so aware in this really sad time that she had a litany of dreams and hopes and business ideas and plans and intentions that she took zero action on. And it gripped me. I knew about many of her plans and ideas because I was kind of her supporter behind the scenes, like, go for it, Mom. Great idea. Great plan. Or, she'd write manuscripts. She was a great writer, but she didn't have the courage to send it out. Or she would, and she'd get one rejection, and that would be like game over. And the thing that really struck me was that I saw a lot of myself in her. Gee, surprise, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But I recognized my tendencies to let fear run the show. And so that for me was this, wait a sec, the idea of not just someone cleaning up after me after I'm dead and gone. Sorry about your luck, whoever gets to do that. But the idea that, I didn't do this life justice, it gripped me and it got a hold. And so that planted the seeds, if you will, to this whole topic. Mm.
Before we go into the amazing 3-4 steps that you have in there, to prep the listener a bit for what's coming here. I mean, the title of the book is probably giving a lot of that away already. But it's this idea that you touch upon on very early on, is that on a high level, we have this human dilemma. On the one side, we want to live to the fullest and we want to be fully alive. And we have this on mugs and fridge magnets. And on the other, we take everything we have for granted, up to and including the time that we still have. And then it's the last months or years, we were like, holy crap, like I need to get moving on that project because, it's, I only have a little bit of time left before, as you put it in the book, bite the biscuit. So why do we humans not get this? That yes, it's important to live, but it's also like start with it now. Don't wait.
Mm-hmm. We're just so fundamentally ridiculous, aren't we? And because it is this whole idea too. Like I talk about the idea where, hey, reminder, we're totally going to die, and it's met with some a look on people's faces, and yet we all rationally know it. We all, like you said, we all have a desire to live fully. And I have, I'm aware fundamentally, just based in psychology, of a couple of different things going on, right? So there's this, on one hand, it's this deep desire to deny the truth. Like it's just a crappy truth. So I'd rather not think about it, thanks. I'd rather play on my phone, if anything, or maybe go and eat a piece of cake, or do anything but that. So we're pushing the idea away of death, which really I believe is the gift that can help us get on with it. But we do this thing where it's like this little comfortable landing pad where we'll have an idea or 2 or 12. And we just do this comfortable thing, which is, I'm going to get to do it later. Mm. Right. So we do this either, retirement, like the land of dreams that are deferred. And I just met a woman who said that her dad waited until he retired to do all sorts of things. And then 3 years into his retirement, he got a pretty massive case of dementia. And so that's just, we all need these little warning stories, right? But we all know the truth that, deferring our life till retirement or until, work dies down or until, some mystical time called later, like the land of tomorrow, it feels like a little bit of a safe place to do that because we are busy today. But I also believe the bigger thing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because you study this stuff and you're in this, it's more than just this denial, push it away, postpone our existence, which breaks my heart. But it's also, I think it's fear. It's that we have ideas and dreams, but they're going to require change. And that feels uncomfortable. And so I would rather settle and just kind of stick to the current thing I've got going on and maybe delude myself into thinking I'll do it later. But I don't want to change my job. That's hard. I don't want to change my relationship. That's tumultuous. Or I don't want to, oh my gosh, how do I move my whole family to the West Coast? Like that's going to be awkward. So I think it's just homeostasis and adaptation. We just get so swept up in the routine too that we just let the days fly by.
I think absolutely in some cases also that fear of failure that we can push away if we don't execute on the plan. Because what if my big project that I've been like, this is my thing, this is my baby. But what if it fails? That will be such a punch in the gut. So I don't need to worry about that because, here's what I'll do. I'll start, but I'll start tomorrow. And then add a week. And I was like, oops, dang.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, it's a big birthday with a 0, and you're kind of looking back and thinking, these are the makings of an existential crisis.
Hey, Michael here. As you might have already heard, I'm currently working on a book on confidence building, having better conversations, and making friends. Would you like to work with me to make this happen? I don't know about you, but I like self-development books that aren't just about the theory and the exercises. I like books that are full of real stories and insights from people who have worked through the concepts and have gotten the results they wanted. And that's how I envision my book too. So I'm looking for a handful of coaching clients to work with me over the next couple of weeks. If you struggle with confidence or your social skills, we can work together for 8 weeks in one-on-one coaching sessions that are tailored towards your specific goals. And your story will, anonymously, of course, be featured in my book and help and inspire others. I'm only going to work on this with 10 people, and as a thank you, offer 50% off my coaching package. If you think this is for you, then head over to herald.coach/book and apply. That's all. Back to the show. So this is where you introduce one of my most favorite anti-heroes of all time. So you have this protagonist in your book, the Grim Reaper, the proverbial OG of death. So how does the Grim Reaper make his appearance in this book as such a prominent character?
I gotta say, I have such a healthy respect for that guy. I mean, he's going to take us all down, but I am so pro Reaper. Of course, he's just this sort of symbol for all of us, but I like the idea of going on a date with death, if that's what you're referring to in the book, this idea about like, well, let's sidle up to this fellow. Let's see what he has to offer. And of course, I get ridiculous and cheeky. You do not have to have intimate relations with the Grim Reaper, but I do believe that getting to know him well and recognizing that it is through the recognition of how temporary we are and that it wakes us up to life. And so I get literal, I get granular with it. I like to point out, of course, all the research that's behind it. If you want me to go there, and believe me, like I love that. But for most people, it's this idea about how do we just make it accessible? How do I peek over the shoulder of the Grim Reaper without really getting overly morbid? We don't have to talk about causes of death, but we can talk about the fact that it is in fact happening. And I count how many Mondays we have left. So we get 4,000 roughly on average. That's the average human lifespan. Yeah. Many of us get so many more, and many of us get woefully less than the 4,000. So like I know as of today, I have 1,841 Mondays left to go. And that makes me go, oh, those things that I want to do that may be wrapped in fear. In fact, they're always wrapped in fear, but whether it's a large size coding or a small size, let's say, I want to do this. And I don't want to wait, right? So that can act as that impetus, which is really the whole point of this. That's why the Reaper is there to help remind us to get on with it.
Yeah. I have 1,664 Mondays left. 52 of those are compliments by you, because you write that if you read the book, you get 1 year bonus.
Yes.
So thank you for that. I am also slightly worried that if I read this book every year, I've kind of found this loophole where I'm like cheating death because I get a year every time I read the book. So if this causes the end of the universe, that's on you, Jodi.
Hey, but, you know what? I'll bear that brunt. Yeah.
Okay, I'll send you a text when it happens. But what I loved about this idea of bringing death, and you have these beautiful, funny illustrations in the book as well, is that death is such a concept that is so remote in our society. It's so clean. Like we don't, it's like someone in the family dies and is immediately taken care of. And so we don't have a touching point unless we have a goldfish that needs to be flushed down the toilet every couple of years. So we don't have that concept anymore. And now you can talk abstractly about death, or you could bring this anthropomorphized. Is that the right word? And you bring this, like the Santa Claus and the blah, blah, blah. And here's death. And he's a character and he's funny and he has a certain look. And we're going to bring that person in to like show you, yes, time is ticking. Here's the sand clock. You know, he's riding on the skeletal horse, even though the head falls off every once in a while. And this is like real. Like this is something that is happening.
I love where you're going. I love what you're talking about because we know it's a taboo subject, but as one of the greatest sort of existential psychologists said, Feifel, is like we pay, I'm going to bastardize his quote, but we pay handsomely for the taboo we affix to death. You know, so it's this thing where we don't want to think about it, and society has helped us not think about it. You know, Uncle Chester, after he dies, isn't lingering in the house for a while people come and visit the rotting corpse. Maybe that's an upgrade, maybe not. We can debate, but we whisk people away who are dead. We try to mask it, even though bizarrely, death is like super intriguing, right? Like we're all slowing down at a car crash. Because we have this eerie fascination with it, right? Oh, I want to see. And then we get that funny feeling of like, ooh, it could have been me. So we have a equal fear of it that makes us want to avoid it, and a fascination with it that makes us want to watch some gory movies. And so we just acknowledge it's an enticing, bizarre topic that for many of us represents the pit of most of our anxiety. And so it's going to be sort of salacious for us. My encouragement is to go there, right? And so that's where, like, even in reading this book and talking about it with friends and having conversations about the fact, not just the stuff like planning your death. I think that's important. I don't delve into that part of this. I talk about it as, let's just come to face the facts about the inevitability and not be afraid, because the research to me is so compelling that for many of us, our anxiety about death is rooted in something that is so seemingly fixable, which is to live our lives more fully. So the correlation is profound, for people near the end of life who have a greater fear of death. It's often because they feel like they've left life unlived. And that to me is like, does that not grab you by the shoulders and shake you, right? Like, we have an antidote to some of this anxiety, also, wouldn't it just be lovely to participate in this one precious life we've been given?
And that is so important. And I'm glad we're turning this discussion around towards what this book is really about, because we've been talking about death, but that is really just a comic sidekick, almost like someone holding up a flag that says, please think about me every once in a while. But what I went through as I was reading your book, and then, by the way, I must admit, I unfortunately started going through it too late. I was going through the entire book because I read every book before the interview. With your book, however, with every little question, I was prompted to like journal and write, and I have found insights. I was like, holy, this is like, I kid you not. So this book made me laugh because of the excessive use of the word necrophilia. I don't know, this just works with me. It made me laugh. It made me cry, but most of all, like, it made me want to feel alive. It just wanted me to live. And there were days where I was like, you know what? I have a full to-do list. The sun is shining. Screw this. The afternoon is out in the sun, drinking coffee in the sun. There were days where I went to my favorite Thai place, takeaway, to get my favorite Thai food. By the way, they sent their thanks because they had a really good business week with me, getting takeaway Thai food. So this book
keeping
really
the Thai alive. Yep.
Yeah. Buy your new Mercedes. Thank you very much, Michael. This book was, yes, it's about death, but really it's about being alive.
Thank you for sharing that, because that is, it's exactly the thing, is that we're going to flip the script pretty fast from, yes, Grim Reaper. Yes, you can come along as a sidekick, and it's all in service of living what I call wider and deeper, right? And so your choices, the examples you gave about making a choice to choose to be alive in any given moment, is exactly what this is. And it's often just in those small doses. And so we can talk about, like, it does not need to be a massive life change. It's just the subtle decisions we can make from moment to moment that can be the thing that makes us feel at the end of a given day, you know what? today was pretty cool. I sat outside. I mean, we can't say screw this for very long to all of our responsibilities, but I think most of us get that. We're not talking about, abandoning all, our children and our appointments necessarily for long. I think about there's the quote by Ben Franklin. Most of us die at 25 but aren't buried until 75.
35.
And this goes back to like one of your original points you were making with us together. It's like our tendency to just let, we take life for granted and we slip into autopilot. And as much as we have a yearning to live, we'd also need to be coaxed because we're busy or we are scared. So this is it's more than a coaxing. I think it's really just like a karate kick. I want it to be actually for some of us just a shove. For me too. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm writing all this for me too. I need major encouragement to get up and out. And so, what does that mean for each one of us to feel more alive? Because time's ticking.
Yeah. So you wrote, and I underlined this line so many times that my Kindle nearly broke. And I'm going to butcher the quote because I don't have it in front of me, but it's a life of fulfillment isn't given to you. It's made by you.
Oh, and this is up your alley, right?
Oh, yeah. This wake up call is like, you don't wait for it. It's not like you're not, a special snowflake who doesn't have meaning, vitality, energy. This is up to you. So let's set the stage a little bit on how we get there, because yes, we are going to talk about bringing vitality and meaning and width and depth and everything into our life. We're definitely going to talk about this in this interview. But I think what makes your book so interesting is the way how we get there through death contemplation, death meditation. So we start with a pre-mortem, like look at your life right now and write about your satisfaction, your boredom, your vitality, your regrets. That was a big one for me. Like write down the regrets you're going to have on your deathbed. And this gave me some insights. I was like, whoa.
Can I get nosy and ask an example of just maybe one?
So a big one for me was, and this does feel a little bit scary to share on a podcast that millions of people are going to listen to, but I wrote down that I'm going to regret if I don't have a family. I'm going to regret that. And I'm 45, and there's which is not a secret because you could have calculated that from the Mondays I have left. And there's always time, and there's always like not right now. There's like stuff that needs to be tackled first, and then I'm like, no, this is going to be a freaking regret. So, any one of our listeners who's like interested in dating a really hot and funny guy in Vienna, shoot me a profile. So yeah, this one is big one. And you know what? Another one was vacation time, because my last vacation, and by vacation I mean more than 2 days off, was June 2020, whereas there's extended periods of time off. And again, I can always have a vacation a month from now. It can always happen. And then it doesn't. And they only hit me because I was thinking about myself on a deathbed. Pre-mortem.
I love that you shared that. I love that. And your examples fabulously highlight, again, our tendencies to think we can do stuff later. And maybe, there's a line that I love, which is like, tomorrow is a premise, not a promise, which is like just another way of saying what you've paraphrased. And the thing I back to phrasing, and it's corny, but I've coined this thing called pre-grets. And I know it's super cheesy, but it's this idea that, when you do that deathbed regret exercise, which has been done before, and I want us to keep doing it because we do need that reminder. When we identify that list, the good news, of course, is like for most of us, we're not on our deathbed. Like, yay, us. We're going to live to see another day. And so what can we do to prevent that regret from happening? Because it's not a regret yet. I mean, it's being brewed, but yes, we could put a fork in it. And so let's do the thing, which is, obviously for your examples, it's like book a trip, like, or at least book off the time. Like we all know what first steps we need to take, but sometimes again, we just need the push. And so sometimes it is through that little discomfort. And because we know that it's an inciting event, or it's some kind of a desire to avoid pain, even more so than to seek pleasure, that will be the thing that pushes us. So let's use that. And then, I mean, we could have a whole other conversation about getting you on the market so that you can find the family. I mean, we could just get your dating profile up and running. Just saying.
Yeah. I'll shoot you an email and get your feedback on that one. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Let's not talk about my dating life here, because we have death to talk about. Because here's the second part. So first part is this pre-mortem assessment, and then we have this date with death. Really, in like a friendly way, we are spending some time with death. We're contemplating this, and here's a really interesting distinction, because when I read about this setup, beginning with deal with death for a little bit, I thought that's what I get every time I turn on the news, right? It's death, it's wars, it's disasters, it's famine, it's horrible things that are happening out there. But you're making this great point where there's a difference between abstractly hearing about death in general, which brings up a lot of shit, which I hope you can shed a light on in a bit. So this abstract taking in of death, and then actually saying, let's picture my death specifically in 40. And there's a big difference between that date with my own death and this it being exposed to everyone else's suffering.
Yes. Yeah. You're highlighting the thing I found most fascinating in the research. So there's this theory called terror management theory.
That sounds like my life.
Your picture was beside it. It's so bizarre. So the notion is that when we are faced with the idea or presence of death, which, in fancy terms is called mortality salience in psychology, when we're made aware of it, our brains do things. They try to protect ourselves, which is helpful until it's not. But if it is, back to your point, if it's an abstract sort of notion of death, like a funeral procession drives by, or we do watch the news, or we learn of an old colleague who just, passed away from cancer, but we don't really stop and, process it. That's all abstract. And that elicits, according to terror management theory, a couple of natural reactions. The first one is that we tend to want to cling kind of fiercely to our worldview. And without going super sciencey, it's just that it provides us with a sense of comfort in something that will endure beyond us. So like for many of us, it would be really aligning closer or like doubling down on your worldview, like maybe your political belief or your kind of national identity, go Austria, or it would be maybe even your affiliations with work or even your sports teams. And so it's just some desire to like belong to something that feels safe and enduring. And then we want to maximize our self-esteem. And that means doing things that help us feel like we are good little members of those groups we're part of. All that could be fine. But sometimes what it leads to is this sort of sense of, us versus them. Like my worldview is better than yours and yours is a problem. And it just creates some sort of tension. And it's just not really super pro-social, and it's just not really great for us.
I just need a bigger car than you. And then I'm the winner.
Absolutely. All this does go on as that undercurrent in our brains. And so that's just when stuff's abstract. Now here we are, we're living in a world with abstract death reminders all around us. And so we're kind of dealing with this terror management theory on a low grade level. Let's flip it to what do we want to do with this? And this is where death reflection is what it's called in the science, but it's just like, let's just do something with it. Let's, like, for example, read the book and go through the exercises as you have diligently done to stop and really contemplate and be, and not flit it away, but stop and go like, wow, like what do I maybe want my legacy to be? Or what would I like to do in the next 10 years? Or wow, how am I viewing death? So that, am I looking at it as a helper to help me live? So if we're really conscious about it, then good things happen. And the research is so overwhelmingly wonderful about how it does make us better to other people. And that's nice on the outside. But given that, we're talking about ourselves here, it's like, then you get to enjoy, again, the gift you've been given. It helps us to maximize and have more of those intrinsic motivations and goals rather than the extrinsic stuff. So the car becomes typically less important than does the desire to say, hey, how do I want to make sure that maybe I am contributing in my community, for example? So lots of good things happen when we take death seriously. Not a lot of good things happen when we try and push it away and then have another Mai Tai.
Exactly. So a big one, a big way of getting to the meaningful stuff in life, the good stuff, are regrets. So that is kind of the last the last downer I want to touch upon before we look at the good stuff. Because, like I said earlier, for me, like looking at regrets was a really huge catalyst for finding fulfillment and meaning and vitality by looking through the lens of those regrets. So let's talk about, everyone's favorite topic on a Saturday morning, regrets. What are your thoughts on that, Jodi?
Yes. Why did I have that extra Mai Tai? What was I thinking? Yes. Well, I, first of all, love that there are regret researchers. I mean, wouldn't it just be so cool at a party to be like, I research regret?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's probably number 2 right after dentist. Yeah.
So, yeah, you'll clear the room. Fascinating to me is that there are 2 different kinds of regrets. And I want to quickly wash one of them away because I think sometimes we get fixated on them and they don't really matter. So there were regrets of commission. And those are the things we did that with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, we wish we hadn't done it. Like been a bully in school or, gotten a DUI or, whatever, taken that job in San Francisco or whatever the things we did. We're like, oh man, but let's just wash that away because psychologically speaking, we can rationalize that stuff over time. The more insidious stuff where the problems are, and this is where we like to play, are the regrets of omission, which are the regrets about the things that we didn't do. And so these are known as the paths not taken. And I just love even just the metaphor of that, right? It's like, I saw the path. I wanted to go down the path, but I chose to go back to bed, or I chose to just take the safe path home, which is, what I would do. But versus like, I wanted to study that thing in school, or I wanted to start a family, or I wanted to go and see what the deal was about the Croatian coast, but I didn't, and the list goes on. And this is the thing I love most in doing workshops with groups is like, there's a really cool thing that I feel like regrets are, pregrets are contagious because we get, and in a good way, because it's awareness about, oh, wait a minute. Yes. I always wanted to see the Northern Lights too. Or I always wanted. And so it essentially is like a bucket list in reverse. Yeah. And, cause it's like the things that you wanted to do that you didn't if you were on your deathbed. And again, the power that we have to make the choice. We can't do all of them, unfortunately, because, Mondays are limited. So at some point, you got to put a star or highlight some of the things you want to do. But I think we all have that inner knowing, like this one would really make me feel like shit on my deathbed versus, yeah, you know what? Yeah, it would have been nice if I got to go to New Zealand, but it wasn't like on the top of the list. And so these are the chances I think that we have is to say, what would a path not taken be? And I call them things that you would put in your book of coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And this just all goes back to my mom that I was talking with you about. I mean, she had volumes in her books of coulda, shoulda, wouldas that just to me feels like, I feel bad speaking about her behind her back, like, love you, Mom. But like, doesn't it just feel like such a shame? And maybe it's because it's rooted in a notion that we have this opportunity, this gift of time we've been granted. And it's just bizarre and absurd. Let's acknowledge that we get this funny little finite period of time and we're all just trying to do our best and like our lives, sometimes mostly love our lives, do good things, not be an asshole. And then we die. And I just think, what if we were able to just make the most of it in a reasonable way, but in a reasonable way. And that's where let's just get serious. What are, your top 2 things like you've just identified today that you might regret and then commit to doing something about it within the next 2 weeks of your life. One step.
Yeah. And so many paths I want to take this. One really important one about the regrets or changing life in regards to regrets is that, as you hinted at earlier, this can happen at homeopathic doses. If your life right now is a 2 out of 10, you don't need to go to 10 tomorrow. You can how do you up this by half a point? I was reading this question. It's like, hey, are you having a shitty day today? How could this be like half a percentage point better? I was like, yeah, this I can answer. Like, ask me how I make it perfect today. I have no answer, but half a point, I can do that. And then, yeah, it's the small little things and just eye-opening how something that small can start getting the ball rolling towards those, big regrets we might end up one day.
Okay. I love that you brought this up because I think there is, again, this notion of the all or nothing thinking we succumb to, that I gotta, if I can't get to 10 or even 9, I'll compromise at a 9, and then I'm not going to start yet. And that's more of the deferral thinking. And it's totally normal. I do the same thing too. And I liked how you even highlighted like a half point, because I'm a big fan of decimal points. Because I feel like if it's a 2, 10% better, it might check my math. This is not my strong suit, but maybe that's getting you to 2.2.
Roughly. Give or take one. Yes.
I'll pull out the abacus, but what is manageable and what's manageable. And this is the thing that astounds me. And the thing that I actually find, the most inspiring of even all of this work and conversation is the doability of what it takes to feel more alive, because it is in small doses typically. So for most of us, we are busy. And we have days that are already kind of maxed out, and it's, often self-imposed, but that's a different conversation. And so our choices in moments like in between meetings, or what you choose to do with your evening, or what you choose to have your Saturday morning before all the craziness starts of whatever you've got going on in your life, like kids or so on, or commitments. These are our moments where we can say, do I fill it with the mundane stuff? And we all know what that's like, right? Like all of a sudden, like, where did the evening go? And we have nothing to show for it. And I don't mean show for it in a fancy, glitzy way. Like, what can I take a picture of for social media, or show for it, like to show the neighbors, like, or, it's
have I been
that
productive?
Notion. Exactly. Right. Even like, look at this painting I just painted, which would be nice, but what's the motive? This notion, like, we have these little pockets of time, and it's up to us to squander it or savor it. And I will squander the heck out of it. My choice in between a meeting, I'm checking my email. I have a distorted idea about what will make me feel good. And it's like responding to emails. But you know what? When I get to my deathbed, am I going to feel proud that I was a very, very diligent email responder? I mean, not really. Like I'd rather do the thing I do, which is often, and this is the thing I encourage, is have the awareness and list ready of the things you love to do to savor your life. And so I delivered a workshop yesterday, and a woman in the room, I was getting them to share little things that bring them more vitality. And she said, I just recently got into just doing these little seedling plantings, and I'm planting these little seeds in little tiny containers. And she said, in between, like when I have like a quick lunch break, and we all laugh because they're, her team, of course, their culture, like they don't take lunch breaks, but whatever. She's like, I go and I check on the seeds and I see a sprout. And she also was fabulous because she said, and doing this is also great because sometimes the seedlings, the little sprouts die. And it's an example of how death happens. And I don't know why, but it happened. I was like, oh, this is a killer anecdote, honey. She didn't even know how good it was. But the point is, she goes and tends to her little seedlings for 5 minutes in between a meeting and comes back. And just think about this, because we underestimate, we think, big deal. But we're wired so that if we can put ourselves in any kind of a positive emotional state, research is clear based on theory that opens and broadens up our perspective. There's a broaden and build theory, which states just that we're open and we're more inclined to find better resources, or we're just in a better freaking mood. Yeah. Versus me answering 3 emails, one of which annoyed me, and now I'm going to log into another meeting. Am I going to like my life better in that moment or for that meeting, or versus tending to the sprouts or going outside and having the coffee, just standing outside and watching a bird and then coming back in? So these are the subtle little things. And I just think we're not prepared. I think we're not really prepared to know, what could I do in a little moment of time? Or what could I do if I've got an hour? Or what could I, and so I have a list, and I encourage everybody to write a little list of little things, little moment that gives you little pure little jolts of joy, tiny little bursts of something that just makes you feel a little bit alive, and choose that.
Yes. Yes to all of that. So many of my clients that I work with, I need to plant this idea in their head that they don't need to be productive all the time and optimize. And Michael, any ideas how I can optimize my calendar? any better, any tighter. And it's like, how much PlayStation do you play in the week? And they're like, what? I don't have time for that. It's like, yeah, that's the problem with your calendar. Like, please organize, please have, like, do some fun stuff. You're only given one life, and you're not checking out at the end saying, hey, look, I got the high score. I was most productive. I was better than everyone else in the company. No, you're going to lie on your deathbed and you're going to think, why did the top 5 regrets of the dying, I think one of the most read articles back in 2014. I wish I had allowed myself to be more happy. I wish I had worked less. And
the purity.
Yeah. And this is the other thing that your regrets point to. Not only that you can make just tiny little 10% improvements and already move forward, but oftentimes you do make an effort to make things better, but it's weird stuff like being more productive, making more money, doing more of the things we're told we must do, like ice baths and meditation and going to the gym. And then we think if we do more of that, I mean, if that's for you, by all means do it. But please don't, don't do all of that stuff because you're being told this is a shoulda, woulda, something. I forgot the third one.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah. Well, you're highlighting too something I think that's important is those examples might have been more in the realm of health, for example. And you are right that like following other people's prescriptions may or may not work for you. But I do think that there's value in what I call diagnosing the dead zones. Yeah. And it's highlighting where in your life have things like kind of literally flatlined. Because, we have all these domains of life. So there's like your career and then your love or lack of love life, your family, friends, recreation. Oh, what's that? Leisure? What? Spirituality. Insert here all the areas. I think that there's real value in noticing where life is feeling dead. Because that's your golden chance to identify and say, hey, if it is my health, what will be a few things I could do? Actually, that's even too much. What's one thing I could do to feel a little more alive? And for many of us, it's funny. It's like rekindling something we used to do. I find this a lot where I'll ask people, what makes you feel really alive? And that's actually just, that in itself. And what makes you feel really, really alive? And so sometimes it takes a minute, but then you get a list going. And number one, I'm always astounded that for many people, when they answer that question, the last time they did that thing that makes them feel so alive, it hasn't been for a while, so that's number one. That's just interesting insight, right? Like the thing that makes me feel most alive is skiing. Oh, great. Like when was the last time you skied? And like, 2019, like before COVID.
Late 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or even, thank you. Because oftentimes it's like a very dusty memory. But even the idea of whether it's that we have a hobby or we used to do something that made us feel good years ago, what about just brushing that off and trying that again? Because it's not that we have to go find a new passion. I think there's a lot of pressure. I work with a lot of people in groups that are like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, you got to go try stuff on for size. But the easiest way for most of us is if you already had a proven winner in your life, if you knew that doing restorative yoga was your jam, go restore yoga again, right? Or if it meant like glass blowing, go blow glass tonight. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
This was one of my big realizations during the pandemic, which in the book you call the plague. And I agree with you, wannabe zombie apocalypse. I was going through things that really made me happy as a kid. I had a beautiful childhood, growing up in a village in Bavaria. And I was wondering, what were the things that made me laugh back then? It was tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. It was anything remote control, car, plane, helicopter, and it was video games. And I splurged on all of that during the pandemic, and I brought it back in. I bought like shitloads of Dungeons and Dragons games. I even got certified as a therapeutic game master. I built remote control cars. I'm out with my best buddy every weekend, racing in the park, playing tabletop role-playing games with friends, like bringing all of that stuff back. And it's such a vitality boost because
Oh.
what else would you do on a weekend? Well, let's watch some movies because I don't know what to do. It's like, no, this is the stuff I loved as a kid. And
Oh.
yeah, and actually, and then I'll shut up about toys. Just as I was prepping for the final notes for this interview with you, I was again procrastinating, Googling for potential remote control cars I could buy. And I saw that they are relaunching the exact same car I had as a 14-year-old in
No.
May. It's going to come back. So you can imagine what I'm going to start saving up for from here on out. Anyway, enough.
I love this. I love this so much because you're touching on, the childhood stuff is an absolute shortcut to vitality because you already knew. And you get the benefit not only of knowing you like remote control cars probably still, but that there's the nostalgic factor, which has its own unique flavor in the world of well-being. So love that.
And also the things that during childhood were expensive and something you had to like wait for Christmas to get one. Guess what? You're an adult. You probably have a job. This is like, I'm not saying like everyone is like super rich and can get that stuff, but for young Michael, this one action figure was like saving up 2 months. Now it's like, come on, if I cook a dinner myself one evening, I can buy that thing, right? So it's like more accessible as well.
Oh, I love that. But the point though is that you're saying it's accessible and yet you had to be the one to stop and say, what is an example of something that might widen my life versus doing the thing, the default for most of us. And I know this well, you alluded to like watching movies or whatever, like, hello, Netflix, like I will be on the couch in a hurry. And I think that you used an example a minute ago about some of your clients, very busy, successful people who we maybe even get some self-worth from productivity. It's like, go, 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 go. And yet there is an off switch. But I think the thing we experience, many of us, is that we're like full on to work. And that can be really good and rewarding and fulfilling and delivers achievement, which is part of well-being. It's great. But then when we're in the off switch mode, it's like full off. It's like zombie zone, disengaged from life. And because we do that thing where we're like, oh, it's been a crazy day. I just need to chill out. And that for many of us looks like it's sort of the zombie pose. And I've assumed it quite well. And I'm not here to judge because that might bring pure joy to somebody to say, I am a movie person and all I want to do when I'm not working is watch movies. Great. If that brings you joy, that's your version of an astonishing life. Oh my gosh.
Get a big TV, get an amazing sound system and do exactly that.
Do it. However, I think many of us do know that we have that sense inside of ourselves that I get after many nights in a row where my version of, after a work day, I was unplugging and being on the couch. It's like, I do kind of, if I turn my head to the right and I look out the window, I'm like, maybe there's something out there for me. That feeling of, I know if I maybe made a choice to go out and sit outside and read a chapter of a novel, that might actually make me feel more alive and plugged into my life than if I just watched another episode that serves up so conveniently through the streaming platforms. And so I want to just throw that in there too, that I think we have the on or off switch. And I think there's an in-between where we can just insert a little more life, even amidst the zombie moments. So there are opportunities there too.
So this brings us to two magic elixirs that we'll also hand over the recipe to you so you can make them yourself, dear listener. And this is vitality and its meaning. And you explain it as making life wider, more energetic. So what is this magical vitality you speak of, Jodi?
It's just so magical. And I always like the definition in research that it's called a positive health of spirit. That always sounds kind of nice, right? I want my spirit to feel healthy. And this is like the widening, I think, is just the right metaphor because it's literally like, how can you stretch and expand and add in? This is the fun and frothy stuff. This is the pleasure. And it's in the world of well-being. It's defined as the hedonic aspect of well-being. It's simple happiness. It's joy. It's the hobbies. It's the experiences. It's the tastes. It's the pleasures. It's the senses. It's just like, let's have some fun around here. And funny enough, in my research, and this is juxtaposed against, of course, what you've hinted at as the opposite end of the spectrum of not spectrum, but meaning, the other dimension, which is where we can deepen our lives. More people are clamoring for vitality than they are meaning. And I recognize, like, in our world, there's still always a hunger for more meaning. You know, I want my work to feel meaningful. I want to have a purpose. Great. And that, I'm not saying we've solved that problem, but interestingly, more people, especially busy adults, are in that, especially depending on the phase they're at in their busy career or child rearing or just fallen off the wagon of fun. There's a desire for just more joie de vivre. And I find that exciting because that to me is, oh, we can fix that in a hurry.
Yeah. So this is what I love about You Only Die Once. You give a chapter, a concept, you explain it really well. And then you don't just give one way of reaching it. It's like, no, here's a menu. Here's the entire buffet of, for example, gaining vitality, right? I took like note of all the top points, and I think 12, 15. And they are things like, do things you value. Copy a role model. Find someone who has that vitality. Copy them. Hang out with your favorite people. I highlighted this one for me, and take on a hobby. So I really appreciate that. If, for example, take on a hobby or hang out with your favorite people doesn't resonate with this one person reading it because it's not possible for them right now. I don't know why. Maybe they're sitting in jail. I don't know. But then it's like, okay, but here are like 8 other ways in which I can, let me try out this play mentality, right? Let me pick up the do things you value.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's a smorgasbord.
You're a good reader. I love smorgasbord. Exactly. I mean, I am a huge fan of buffets. I liked variety, but it's like the thing that might resonate with you today, do it, kill it, done it, love it, live it. And then maybe you need a new thing for tomorrow or something for everybody. But I also find examples that other people have, what they do. It really helps us. That's what I was talking about earlier with regrets in the workshop I give, where I'll always ask people in a workshop after talking about vitality for people to stop and think about their own life. What do you want to do that will add more vitality? Or what do you want to do more of? I mean, let's be honest. If something's already working for you, one of the fast tracks also is like, could you do it another night a week? You know, if you love it that much, like, could we just do more? And that might get you your extra 10% today. But when we hear other people's examples, which is why I try to pepper that into the book and in every conversation I have, is like, that twigs us. Like, we just, you know, it's sometimes because we're adults and we have calcified and we're not as adventurous and imaginative as we were when we were kids. We just suffer from a failure of imagination. And so why not just have someone else's idea be like, wait a minute, I wanted to go learn Italian too. Yes, that's right. I forgot I was going to do that. Or, right, I wanted to make a giant pot of paella. And, or, you know, so I find that to be valuable too, is like, inspire me, please. Give me, just give me an idea, and maybe that'll help set me off rolling.
Yeah. And then maybe even combine it with hanging out with your favorite people. And while you're learning to make your most amazing sushi paella or whatever, bring friends along and be like, hey, you know, you've been talking about this Netflix thing you watch so much. Would you like to come to cooking class with me? It's going to be fun. And spreading the love a little bit. I do this as almost automatic response, that if I go somewhere, I text a couple of people and I say, hey, you know, there's this concert, there's this thing, you want to come along? And I'm surprised by how that often hits people as, what, this can be done? Like, what is this thing you do, Michael? You text people and you bring them. It's like, yeah, this actually works. Like, you can just bring your favorite people along with you as you do things, and they will appreciate it. And you just, you know, spread the love. It's weird how this is not, like, I don't know, standard routine.
Right. It's not. Well, also because you're hitting on how we have routines, and it's like, I did not plan to do a concert in the park on Wednesday night. Like, how could I compute? I can't compute this. But I like how you're merging vitality and meaning together, because you know, you go and you might enjoy something that is super fun, like the cooking class, but then you're also having a meaningful connection with a friend.
Oh, that's also vitality though. So for me, like, hanging out with friends is also, there's meaning in there. But I also very often, especially when it's an easy night out, like, please don't ask me tough questions. Let's just laugh. Let's just be silly, right? That is the vitality side of the scale for me.
Yes. Well, can I comment on something you said? When you send a text to people and it's like, would you like to do this thing? You're touching on something else where I think, like, we are often presented with opportunities in life that we have a choice in that moment. And it's either the say yes to life or the decline. And many of us just need to say no to a lot of other things, usually around work.
Well,
boundaries.
some of my friends might say that saying yes to Michael is the decline, but yeah, we can spin it more positively.
Love it. But I recognize that I recognize this because I suffer personally, the desire to either stick to the routine or cocoon, especially if you're a homebody, or whatever the reason is, because it just represents something that's new, is do the thing where you say yes to Michael's text. Do the thing where you try the new thing that someone asks you, because rarely, and I ask this for people, and I have yet to get a real answer where someone said, "Did you regret going and doing the thing?" Like, even if, and I always find it hilariously, if you go to the cooking class and say it's a disaster because you burned your thing, or you go to the concert and it was like, oh, they should not be in concert live, or what, even if it's a theoretical, you're there and you're laughing about it. Hopefully not in front of the teacher or the concert pianist, or you had an experience that you get to bond with someone else. You did a thing, you come home. When do you ever regret going out and doing the thing? Rarely.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
Say yes to life, I guess. Like, say yes to Michael's text.
Let's look at meaning now. This other part, the deeper part. So I think we've sufficiently warmed up in this interview to dig a little deeper. So I'm going to light some incense and ask, what's the meaning of life, Jodi? Tell us.
I'm gonna ask the Grim Reaper to answer that for us. We're bringing him back in the room.
Yes.
A funny existential psychologist made a comment once about how, anything that we do while we're alive, like, that's the meaning of life. It's like, as long as we're alive, then we're still ticking, and that's good. I think it's a bit too simplified. But by definition, thinking about the stuff that is the deepening connection to some kind of purpose. It could be connection to other people, to something spiritual, maybe, not necessarily, to something bigger than you, that counterbalance to vitality. And this is in the well-being world, it's known as the eudaimonic dimension, well-being. And it's often associated with virtues, like doing good things, showing your character, using your strengths. And so it's just a little more of a substance, not to put anything down against vitality, because, oh goodness, we need and want that. We need that too. I always, again, find it so funny with my research that the majority of people plot themselves in the category known as meaningfully bored. And so the latest count was like 39%, and it'll go between 39 and 41. And it's people that are like, I have enough meaning. Maybe it's because my job's meaningful, or maybe I'm looking after elderly parents or something that provides some kind of meaning. But they want more of that fun in their life. Now, with that being said, around 15% of people do identify as what's called vitally empty. So they have lots of vitality. Like, they're going and trying the new cocktail bar or like going to the concert in the park, as aforementioned. But they come home at night and they feel like, but what's this all for? Like, what else? What am I doing this for? That sense of emptiness. And so that, for some people, not as many statistically, but does exist. And that is a whole other dimension of life where if we identify, back to diagnosing the dead zones, right? If maybe that comes up a lot more for career, I find. I don't know about you, because, in the clients you work with, where people are yearning for meaning at work. And I'll be honest, I get a little bit, I guess the word is cautious or befuddled, because I worry that there's too much pressure put on work these days to be the thing.
Yeah.
That delivers on so many levels. Like, it's got to provide purpose and meaning and also good joy with good friends there. Of course we want all that. But I think that it just kind of can't. Like, work's going to be work sometimes. And you can't work at a job that sucks the soul out of you. That's terrible. Change that fast. But I also think that when I know people that feel like they want more meaning in life and they're immediately looking to their job and then blaming the job for not delivering on meaning. It's like, what if we augmented the rest of your life with more meaning so that you felt like there's less pressure on work having to be the thing that fills that bucket? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Like in Germany or Austria, I think as well, there's this idea that your work is your calling. That's it. When I was living in New Zealand, it was complete opposite. Work was something you did to pay the rent, and then you did your life outside of work. And if that is no longer the case, dear listeners from New Zealand, then correct me. It's been a while since I was there. But meaning in my clients, because you asked about what I see in my work, is that my clients usually have work they're satisfied with. They might also have the vitality of being out and having like fun hobbies. What they miss is the meaning that kind of wraps it all up. That would be like close friendships. It's one thing to go to the gym and joke with people, but it's another to have someone that you can call up when you're struggling, that you just, it's your pack, it's your band of brothers and sisters. That adds that meaning, and they're missing that. It's like my work is going fine, but my social life is superficial. Or family and kids and so on, like bringing that level of meaning in as well.
Yeah. I like that saying that. Just made me think too about a dimension of meaning could be challenge. And many of us are like, trust me, my work is challenging enough, but maybe not. Many people feel like I've kind of been there, done that, and I'm going through the motions. And that might be the opportunity then to look at your non-work life and say, where could you add in something? Again, now we're straddling the line between vitality and meaning, to taking up a new a hobby or taking a course or something that actually pushes the limits of your knowledge or ability, so that you can say, wow, I got to the next level. I got the green belt in Taekwondo. And that, like, there is meaning, of course, in that sense of accomplishment and feeling like you overcame a challenge, whether it's physical, intellectual, both, doesn't matter. You do you. But I think that that can make up also for a job, for example, that has lost its sense of challenge, because maybe you are like, you've been doing it for 19 years and you're like going through the motions.
Yeah. And again, in this topic, I applaud you for giving so many options that I'm shying away from reading them all out. But I'll give you some highlights that of all the examples of finding meaning that you list out. My three favorites are embrace suffering, loss, and discomfort. This is also something that Viktor Frankl writes, that one of the sources of finding meaning can be your suffering. And my own meaning in life is best described by his quote, what is to give light must endure burning. And this is where I find a lot of my own like meaning, in that the shit I'm going through helps others, and therefore turns that burning into light, I guess. Another one is, this is completely the opposite end, keep a folder of emails, texts, and notes that you want to revisit. And this is something, so dear listener, for those who wonder what is meant by that, I've personally started doing that when I started becoming a public speaker, because it was so hard to go up on stage every once in a while, that I needed my safe place to go to get a little bit of love. And so I kept every nice email, every social media mention, everything that was nice and supporting. I screenshotted that and I put it away, so that when I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I like, it's like, no, look at the latest like 10. Look at the stuff from 2015. Catch up on that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I call it the warm and fuzzy folder.
The warm and fuzzy folder. Yeah.
Like, just like put it aside when you need it, even when you don't need it, but do the thing. Because, well, you speak of confidence, you understand the nature, and sometimes we can just feel a little fragile on certain days or moments, especially when we're starting something new or high stakes. So, yeah, I just think, sometimes we can rig life to our advantage to just make it a little bit easier. And that's an easy way to do it.
Yeah. And the third one, and I'll shut up after this one, is savoring. And this is such a powerful thing. I talked about this in my previous interview with Diana Hill. We talked about savoring, especially those social moments we have with someone where we feel like we belong, and to really savor them. And you make a point about this as well, to just really freaking enjoy the thing that you are doing right now and really be present. And whatever it may be, drink, food, movie, whatever, like freaking be there.
Yes.
Be present.
Be there. Well, Yes. And I recognize that that's hard for a lot of us, myself included. And so one of the things I've found comforting about savoring is that it can be over 3 different, they call them like temporal landscapes. So you can savor the past. Easy peasy is like, go back in your phone and look at the photos from 5 years. Look at that. And usually we don't take photos of the miserable things. I mean, unless you're taking like a picture of like your flood damage or something, but usually looking back at photos is going to be an uplifting thing. And you can remember that time that we went and we had that dinner. Remember I wore that hat, whatever. And then then there's the moment, which is what you alluded to, which we already know is difficult because we're, monkey minded, but stopping and being like, I'll never forget. So there's a gentleman who knows someone who is in the midst of dying imminently. Terminal diagnosis. And he said, this friend of mine takes his coffee and he stops and he looks at the mug and he smells the coffee and he tastes it and he savors it and he draws it out. I mean, I guess this guy's got time. He can have an hour-long coffee. And he enjoys the shit out of that coffee in a way that most of us are on the run, on the move. And I'm not suggesting you can still be on the run, but I think we get the essence, right? Mm-hmm. It's like he had bringing it all back in with the Reaper in the room, it's because he knew his days were numbered that coffee mattered. It's that might have been his 27th last cup of coffee he ever had in his entire life. And so again, back to that, let's interrupt this pattern way of thinking about, I'm just going through my motions of living. And it's like, what if this was the last time? This is going to sound super morbid. I might regret it. Probably not. But the conversation you just said about having this really great time with a friend that you're having and savoring it, I don't want us to pollute it with, but I may never see you again. But just toy with it for a minute, right? Say, I really value our friendship. And, given that I think of friends and I think about sometimes you'll visit a friend and you only really get to see them once a year or so. There's a countdown there. How many more times are we going to sit and have Thai food together? Yeah. Right? Those are those that, again, back to bringing in the sort of the scarcity again. And then just to wrap up savoring, because I'd be remiss if I didn't. And then, of course, you can pre-savor, looking ahead into the future. Just like how you are like a giddy little boy looking forward to that remote control car that you're going to get. Oh, look at your eyes. I love it. You're so excited. Yeah. So having something to look forward to. This, to me, in the field of positive psychology, is just one of the easy peasy things we can do. Again, back to rigging our life to enjoy it more. I always say have something in your calendar, literally blocked into your calendar so you can see it and type it a week, a month, a year in advance.
It's prescriptive.
Right. Where you're looking at it. And so I'm looking forward to scalloped potatoes on Sunday. I'm making them. And there will be lots of cheese. I'm looking forward to that. That's simple and easy. And then within a week, I've got a social thing that I'm looking forward to doing with a friend. And then within a year, I'm looking forward to going to Amsterdam, for example. And so it's just little stuff that we can make sure we're going to pre-savor, anticipate that thing coming up. These are all available to us and they provide, a bit of meaning, a bit of vitality, a bit of both, a bit of life. Yeah.
Absolutely. I am reminded of, I think this was last spring where I had this health. I need to be healthy and productive and blah, blah, blah. So in the morning, go out, get some fresh air, get some vitamin, D from the sun, do some meditating. It's all good for you. So I'm rushing out there and I'm doing my thing and I'm sitting in the sun and I'm meditating for 15 minutes because I'm building that streak. And I'm opening my eyes and I realize that I'm sitting in this beautiful spring morning under white cherry blossom trees with the blossoms flying around me. And all I was doing was freaking meditating for 15 minutes. I'm getting the freaking streak in my app. It's that for me was this is I'm going to savor a lot more and I'm going to do a lot less of the prescriptive healthy things. And the same is true for morning coffees. Yeah.
Oh, right. I am missing the most beautiful thing that could be happening with these cherry blossoms because I'm forcing the goodness of meaning into my life. Or we could do it differently.
Yeah. And this is where, to end on a counter reality check note. I do have a mental list in my head of how many times I'm going to see family members. Because, I see them only a couple of times a year. I do have trackers and how many times will I see the more distant friends that I still have. Last year, my dear mom and my grandma visited me. And my grandma is 84. She's very fit. She's a very fit, mentally, physically, very fit. And my mom stayed in the hotel. My grandma stayed with me. And I was realizing that this is like, I have 1 week with my grandma. I have basically in my life 7 more breakfasts with my grandma. And yes, I see them. I see her like a couple of times a year, but always in the afternoon. Like, this is breakfast with grandma. I woke up like the last day she was here. I woke up especially early because I wanted to make sure that I have a long breakfast with my grandma. Probably the last one, even if she lives another 10 years, that was probably my last breakfast with grandma. And it might sound sad, but it's not. It's beautiful to know that, because what would be sad is completely missing that, because I was on my phone, I was sleeping in, had meditation under like cherry blossom trees to do. Missing out something like that would have been the sad thing, but not going through it. So really, like, yeah, memento mori.
Oh, that is one of the most beautiful things I've heard. So poignant. And it's a great example of how we could apply that to most things in our lives if we're attuned.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you stop and do that. And again, without the overly morbid lens, we're not going to dwell on it, but it's just that, again, that awareness that this will be limited. And how do I want to, do I want to be here? How will it change? Whether I'm present or not, how will it change? And so whether it's the quality of the experience being with somebody, again, whether it is about some of the things you yearn to do. I worked with somebody who he was the kind of person that would sort of start and sell companies, and that was his thing. And when he calculated how much time left he had when he would be working, I mean, he didn't want to be buying and selling companies in his 80s, if he was lucky enough to be alive then. But he did the math, and I think he came to this realization, like, I only have a few more big deals in me. And that for him was this wake up of savoring and really being conscious also about what he wanted those 3 deals to look like. You know, I talk about counting our Mondays left, which I think is important. I also think that we benefit from counting how many Mondays are left in our career if we're still in a career. And when I did that recently, it's funny, I do this for a living, but I kind of lost track of that number for me. And when I did it, I might get it wrong, but let's just say I ended up thinking that, by the way, I do kind of plan to work in some capacity until, my last breath, if they'll have me. But for like the kind of, full time, full in, engaged, I think I might have calculated like 627 Mondays. It took my breath away because I had this notion of, I can't fit it all in. And of course, that initial thought is a not very good one. And then for most of us, it then does the thing it should do, according to psychology, is it then turns into some kind of a motivational like fodder for, well, what's my action orientation is to say, I better make sure that the stuff that I'm doing is prioritized and I enjoy it. And like, what am I going to fit in that matters in this time frame? And it does help you to then eliminate some of the things that don't matter, which I think is also a gift. Yeah, like people who've absolutely had, near-death experiences or, a diagnosis, and then they've kind of come out the other end. They're like, oh, honey, I now know what I want in my life. But also more importantly, sometimes like, what kind of bullshit I don't want in my life anymore? That editing is a real benefit of having a near-death experience, I've heard. And I want a little piece of that. And so that's just what I aim to have us think about is like, guys, our time is limited. And so what do you want to fit in? But what do you also want to say thanks, but no thanks to?
Yeah. One of the very first notes that I scribbled into the side of the book was more meaning, less bullshit. That was one of the very first notes that I scribbled into the margins. So, Jodi, thank you so much for writing this phenomenal book. It has the depth of something like Man's Search for Meaning. It has the scientific backing of a top-tier journal, like 10 pages of references, and it has the humor of a Monty Python movie night. So, this comes as highly recommended as I can ever recommend a book without directly handing you a Nobel Prize for literature. So thank you very much for writing this. Where can our listeners find out more about you and the awesome stuff that you do?
Oh, well, thank you for asking that. And also, I'd be remiss. I'm so grateful for your kind words. It means a lot coming from you. I really, really do value that and appreciate it, and the time you've taken to read and hopefully get some value. Thank you. And I can be found over at 4000mondays.com and on Instagram at 4000mondays, spelling it out, the words. And it's just been a total pleasure chatting with you. In a world where our time is of the essence, spending this time with you, I just know it's been time well spent.
I totally the same here. Thank you so much, Jodi.
Thank you for listening to Psychologists Off the Clock. If you enjoy our podcast, you can help us out by leaving a review or contributing on Patreon.
You can get more psychology tips by subscribing to our newsletter and connecting with us on social media.
We'd like to thank our podcast production manager, Jadine Stout-Williams.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for mental health treatment. If you're looking for mental health treatment, please visit the resources page of our website, offtheclockpsych.com.